You have said in the past, in previous interviews, about how the Catholic Church in South Africa was very vocal, very active during the apartheid regime. How do you see the church now?
I do think that this is something we have to recognize. The church was incredibly vocal during apartheid. And I think that when apartheid ended, the church struggled a little bit to find its voice because for so many years they had concentrated together on a very, very important evil that they were confronting. And I think now what you're seeing, though, I think that they have slowly started finding their way. The church is being much more outspoken, especially in South Africa, about numerous issues, whether it be the issue of migration and refugees, whether it be the issue of some of the struggles and concerns that are facing the country here or other countries in the area, whether it be increased violence, especially gender violence, etc. The church has been very outspoken about these issues. And I think you're seeing a more narrowed and concrete and I would say precise narrative that they are presenting recently in the last years. And I see this continuing in the future. I think it's positive where they're moving with their message.
And then there's the whole call for dialogue, not only from the church in Eswatini, but even here in South Africa. The Bishops' Conference, for example, has also called for dialogue, especially when you look at issues as xenophobia, which we've touched on, but also the issue of crime and the economic crisis that the country finds itself in, the energy crisis, for example.
Exactly.
And Eswatini, again, the need for dialogue. What are your words with regards to this call?
Well, first and foremost, I think we can all say one thing together. None of us want violence. And any time that I think valid protest, valid manifestations turns to violence, it's a concern for us all, whether we're religious people or non-religious people. That's the first, I think, precept we have to set out. So in order to avoid this, it is very important that we have some kind of a social dialogue. We need to have a dialogue of different interest groups, different stakeholders, where they can voice their opinions in a respectful and a non-violent way, and where they can be heard. And I think this is the thing. We need, part of the time, we're looking to try to find, we need to have a dialogue on dialogue. Kind of like what we're doing right now with the Synod on Synodality. We're trying to find the proper ways to address certain issues within our own community. But I think that can be also extended to other communities. At times, we need to make sure that we have the proper fora in place where people can come in a safe space, say what they need to say, make sure that they're heard, and then hopefully that will be taken away and there will be some concrete actions made in order to address people's needs and people's desires. So.
And speaking of that synod on synodality, now in the continental phase, we have seen an increase of racism in South Africa.
Yes.
It's more than 26 years, over 26 years of democracy, but racism, racial tensions, it's still there. And it's not only in society, but we see this also within the church.
Certainly.
When we have functions. I mean, you've been here 7 years.
Yes.
I'm sure you've been able to see the divisions within the races at parish level. What would be your word of advice to the conference going forward?
Well, I think the conference is very aware of this. In fact, I know recently in a number of their discussions, one of the concerns that we have had and that I've heard the bishops, the local bishops and leadership of the church express for some time now, is that when we do, for instance, have diocesan gatherings, certain groups are not present. And we just need to be blunt about that. The black community is present, but oftentimes the white community is not present and the colored community are not present. We need to ask ourselves why is this happening? See if we can find some solution for that. But at the same time, we also should know that it is true that you look at diocesan leadership, it's still very top-heavy among the white community. And this is something that's interesting and something that also needs to be addressed. We do have to look And when we want to purify culture, we also have to do the same thing internally at times. We have to look at our own culture and see what things maybe are sinful or not good. What things do we need to purify in order to make sure that we are better reflecting the kingdom of God and what Jesus asked for us to be on this earth. And I think that's part of the struggle, but it's also it's positive because they are looking at these. They're talking about this. They're talking in a very easy, open way. It's not, there's not any animus. There's not any, you very rarely hear anybody upset about it. Just frank, as South Africans tend to do, is throw things out very frankly and discuss it. So I do think there's going to be more discussion about this, and I think it will lead to some concrete actions and to some positive results.
I must say that the church in South Africa has been very privileged with a number of appointments. We're talking about bishops. I don't think the Catholic Church has lived such a period where there have been appointments of bishops and such a frequent pace. Are we likely to see more appointments?
Oh, yes, we have more appointments
anytime
coming
soon?
Well, we'll have to see. That depends on Rome. We've done our work on some of them, but we have a number of places that are looking for new bishops right now. Ingwavuma is still looking for a new bishop, so we're waiting for that. We also know there are some places who have also asked for auxiliaries, so we're looking into that, and there's waiting on Rome on some of that. And then we have recently just started new processes for the Diocese of Bethlehem, because the bishop has already turned 75 there. So we've started a process there. We've also started a process for the the Archdiocese of Johannesburg. So that's going forward. We've also started the process for Kroonstad, which is also going forward. Then outside of that, we've also started a process for Laribe in Lesotho, and we have an ongoing process also for Rundu in Namibia. So we have a number of things that are moving right now.
So speaking of outside South Africa, you've recently visited some of those countries. You're still left with Eswatini and Botswana. But what have been your experience in the other countries, such as Namibia and Lesotho?
It's always a wonderful experience. And I think people who've had the opportunity to look at our Facebook pages and some of the other social media we use can see. We had wonderful liturgies there and had a wonderful time to meet the people for my last visits there, because I have been to those places many times. I think that was my 14th or 15th trip to Lesotho, and probably maybe even more to Namibia, or about the same. So I've made numerous trips there, and some of them have been many days that I've spent with them. So I know the churches well, and I know the people well. And so it was a bittersweet moment for me. It was wonderful to be with them, but also was sad to know that it was probably the last time that I will be with them. So, but I leave with very fond memories of both of those churches. And one of the things that's interesting about Southern Africa is there's a tendency to think that everything is the same here, but it's very different. The church in Lesotho is completely different than the church in South Africa. And Namibia has also got its own distinct personality because of their histories. Also, the missionaries that came in and missionized those areas. So the churches are very different. And so that's always a wonderful thing to see and to appreciate, especially as a nuncio.
Well, Archbishop Wells, thank you so much for your time. But now you're heading to Asia. What are your expectations? Are you looking forward? Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I have never been to that part of the world, to Southeast Asia. I've always known about it. When I was working in the Vatican, there were a number of years where I followed that region and was involved I was in the general affairs section, but I was involved with that region. And so I knew it on paper. But there's a huge, big difference, a chasm between what you know on paper and what you find out when you get there and get to be actually with the people. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to miss this area very much, but I also I'm very hopeful about what I will find there. I know it's going to be a completely different experience, and I'm going to need a lot of prayers, and I'm sure a lot of understanding, because it's going to take me a while to get in and to fit in and to understand what's going on. But I am very, very excited about it.
Well, thank you once again. Wishing you all of the best on your new mission. And yes, the people in Southern Africa are going to miss you. The comments say it all on social media. From the moment Pope Francis made the appointment known, everyone has just been pouring out their heartfelt gratitude to the work that you've done here in the region in Southern Africa. But then also there's the visit, the Lambeth Visit that will happen after many years.
Yes.
And the conference is quite excited about that. How do you feel about this? I know you
It's
have
a great
handled it.
opportunity. It's a great opportunity. I mean, Ad Limina is always a wonderful opportunity for the bishop to go to the tombs of the apostles, the two apostles, Peter and Paul, and then to be with the successor of Peter. And it's a one of the most, I think, significant moments in the life of a bishop when he gets to do this. It's also a very significant moment in the life of the church in the Vatican, because the Vatican needs to touch base and to hear their bishops. And the Pope needs to know exactly what's really going on. He knows from us, but that's only one person sending back, or the staff here sending back information. He needs to talk to them firsthand to know what they're experiencing, what are their hopes, what are their concerns, what are their challenges, what are their prayers. And this is a way for them to share that with the Holy Father and his closest collaborators that work in the Vatican with him. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Well, last question. Your comments to the church in Southern Africa, in the 5 countries that you served.
Well, it was what I was saying the other day. I think I only have one comment, and it is gratitude. That's my one word is I am so grateful. These years have been a blessing to me on so many levels, and I think the very first thing that we have to do as Christians every single day is to give thanks. If you want to think about it, the real first sin was they were not thankful. That's what caused them to have pride, is because they were not grateful for what they had been given. They took it for granted. And I hope I have never taken for granted what I have found here, because the love and prayer and support that has been poured out by the local church for me has been very touching. And it's something that I leave here with great gratitude in my heart. And like I say, I will leave part of my heart behind in Southern Africa.
Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, Sheila.